Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we'll talk about school education punishment or corporal, in other words, corporal punishment. Punishment, despite the fact that it can help shape behavior, is a rather poor method in education because behavior changes are conditioned. As accordingly, um, the behavior will continue only as long as the punishment exists. If the punishment disappears, the negative behavior will reappear. This shows us that the subject doesn't learn what's right or wrong. Instead, only a simple associative learning takes place. Possible appearances of learned helplessness. If the subject isn't presented with an alternative behavior along with the punishment, they may be unable to find that alternative behavior themselves and will become paralyzed in their actions. Educating with violence creates violent people. Violent punishments, physical or psychological, can have severe consequences. Humans learn by imitation and immersion in a social context. If we see violence, we learn to respond in the same way to things that happen to us. Associating punishment to a person and not to a behavior. On many occasions, when a subject doesn't understand why their behavior is wrong, they associate it with the person who's punishing them. The subject believes that the punishment is an evil or egotistical whim of the person who imparts it. Thus, the subject may just avoid the person who punished them instead of changing their behavior. So we should use punishment with caution. As we can see, educating a person is a complex thing. Punishment represents a simple and easy solution that can also be extremely superficial and dangerous. Although negative behaviors shouldn't go unpunished, educating in values is somewhat more complex. A democratic educational style based on discussion is synonymous with a good education. When a child displays negative behavior, discuss why the behavior is wrong with them, the alternatives that exist, and how the child can solve the problems they created. Why we must stop using corporal punishment. One argument One argument made against corporal punishment is that some research has shown it to be not as effective as positive means for managing student behavior. These studies have linked corporal punishment to adverse physical, psychological, and educational outcomes, including increased aggressive and destructive behavior, increased destructive classroom behavior, vandalism, poor school achievement, poor attention span, increased dropout rate, school avoidance and school phobia, low self-esteem, anxiety, somatic complaints, depression, suicide, and retaliation against teachers. Generally, punishment in schools seems to be ineffective, dangerous, and unacceptable method. How do we know today that corporal punishment should be abandoned, given its dangers? We know that at birth a child's brain and nervous system are incomplete and will be constructed all through childhood. The brain of a newborn has one-fifth of weight of an adult, and the other four-fifths develops in the year of childhood and youth. This consists of neural circuits, the brain cells of which, by extending and becoming more intricate, increases the volume of the brain. It will not attain 70 of its weight until just past the age of 2. This is why the joints of the bones in our skulls do not close definitely until adulthood. If the child is frequently placed under stress during this time or for part of it, the brain's development may be disrupted. This happens to be the exact same time when physical punishments are imposed upon him. Discipline is a positive method of teaching students self-control, while punishment is a technique used to enforce discipline. Creating a strong sense of classroom management where students feel safe and respected means that students know what is expected of them and they and um, and they can make the choice to follow those expectations or not. Punishment is the reaction to a lack of discipline, so the first step to preventing the need for punishment is to teach and encourage discipline. Classroom management deals with how things are done in the classroom. Procedures such as how to go to the restrooms or when to sharpen a pencil. Discipline deals with how students behave, so from the beginning, students should know behavior is acceptable and unacceptable. Whereas classroom management is the responsibility of the teacher, discipline is the responsibility of the student. Discipline is the actual act of self-control and appropriate behavior, as taught and modeled by the teacher. And punishment is what occurs if a student chooses to not act in a disciplined way. So prevention or intervention. When it comes to classroom management, it is helpful to structure the class in a way that prevents discipline problems to avoid the need for punishment altogether. One way to use discipline as a means of prevention is to use consequences rather than punishment, where punishments are intended to enforce compliance with classroom rules by using authoritarian discipline. Consequences are intended to help the student to understand what they did wrong and how to use self-control to follow the rules next time. Positive reinforcement. What messages do children receive from being hit? You can see the picture of the cat who suffered from punishment. It's a kind of a symbol. Uh, what message do children receive from being hit? I have the right to hit you. By hurting you, I'm doing you good. You think I'm hurting you, but I'm doing you good. The next one. You are wrong to think I'm hurting you. You are not capable of understanding what I'm doing to you. Don't listen to the voice deep down inside of you. Listen only to the voice of your teacher, mother, father, and so on. So here students first need to know what is acceptable behavior for the classroom and what is unacceptable behavior. Negative reinforcement according to this, as can be seen from the slide, sometimes punishment is required if a student chooses to break the rules of the classroom. If the teacher chooses to correct the behavior by using punishment, it's important to focus on correcting the behavior for future learning rather than just punishing the student. Negative reinforcement punishment techniques tend to treat discipline as a simple act, but discipline is really a process and general way of behaving. Negative reinforcement like punishment can make a student feel angry or ashamed because students may get the message that they are the problem rather than the behavior. These techniques rarely prevent misbehavior in the future and negatively affect teacher-student relationships. Central word or secondary education. Even animals are protected against cruelty. Cruelty to animals is punishable under Section 11 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1960. Beating, kicking, overriding, overdriving, overloading, torturing, or otherwise treating any animal so as to subject it to unnecessary pain or suffering is a criminal offense. Our children surely cannot be worse off than animals. So, ending corporal punishment of children. According to UN Deputy High Commissioner for Human Rights, Khan thinks that the need to use promote nonviolent values and awareness raising among all those working with children is essential if we want this situation to come to an end. So methods here can be kind of the proposed framework draws on organizational theory as well as uh, scholarship on school discipline and punishment and the effect of placing officers in school. It also draws from insights gathered from the site visits, interviews, and focus groups conducted as part of the process evaluation of school-based prevention. Is it difficult not to hit? Make the world a safe zone for children. So it's important to make decisions not to hit. Practice the golden rule. Treat the child as you would want to be treated under the same circumstances. Be receptive to all the child's feelings, even if they come across as negative. Jealousy, for example, while he is not entitled to hit his little brother, his feelings are his own, and he is entitled not to love him. Once, once classroom climate is established, we can begin to talk about punishment and consistency and reinforcement. The number one aspect of punishment to remember is consistency. Most times students are pushing boundaries to learn where the line is. Therefore, we need consistent punishment to maintain the boundaries. What principles are followed to teach a child without hitting? The principle of nonviolent upbringing comes down to three words. So the respect the child, treat the child as we would want to be treated. Here the practical application of this respect is also easily defined. Treat the child as we would want to be treated. The bulk of what a child learns, he learns by imitation, as if he were a mirror determined less by what we want him to learn than by how we act toward him. Do we want him to know how to love? Let's love him. That he respect others? Let's respect him. That he be patient and tolerant? Let's be patient and tolerant with him. On